evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 18th of February, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Yellow Vest protests in Canada, could they be coming? Too late, they already are. This is a story coming out of Alberta, and there is a convoy of trucks, about 80 of them, who set off to Ottawa to take their beefs to the Prime Minister and the Liberal government, which are basically the collapse of the oil industry. This is a very tenuous situation, and there are huge amounts of jobs that have been affected by this. But basically what's happened is that the tar sands cannot get their oil from Alberta to the coast and to the world's markets. Now we get a lot less for our oil in Canada than West Texas crude, and it is about $18 per barrel less, and so that makes a tenuous situation even more difficult. The Liberal government has bought the Trans Mountain pipeline, which was mired in controversy and protest. That was at a cost of $4.5 billion, and but they've made no move forward to continue the construction, and that's why they bought it, of course, was to make sure that the pipeline was constructed respecting all treaty lands and the wishes of Indigenous peoples. So what this has done is basically people can't pay their bills. And I don't know if you recall the zero hedge story that I did the other day, and that's exactly what's going on worldwide that's driving the Yellow Vest protests in France, and also now starting up in England, Netherlands and Brussels. And to cap that off, between the 1st of April and the 1st of August, depending on where you live in Canada, a carbon tax is going to be put onto all of gasoline products. So this is going to increase your winter heating costs and also increase your commute costs. And of course, certainly here in Ontario, what's happened is that we've had a gentrification of the inner cities, and it's now too expensive for young couples to purchase. So what they did was they moved into what they call the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and these are some of the bigger centres like Barrie and Peterborough outside of Toronto. And because at one time when gasoline was cheap and house prices were cheap, it made more sense to live up there and commute in every day. But now that gasoline prices have gone up, and even though the oil companies are not getting enough money for their crude, because of the process of investment and stocks and shares and so on and so forth, really the cost of oil now depends more on the demand and the availability of energy to fill that demand. And if there's not enough energy, say for example you have a cold winter, the price of home heating oil is going to go through the roof, same with propane and natural gas. Okay, so it's based on demand and ability to meet that demand rather than the actual cost of the raw product coming out of the ground. And so you can have these bizarre situations where the cost of the product is reasonably cheap, so the producers are having a tough time employing people and so on and so forth. However, the cost to the end consumer is very expensive. And so this is how a problem basically centred in Alberta radiates out through the whole of the country. And as I say, a carbon tax is going to be coming into play just at a time when Canadians are basically maxed out on their credit cards. They have high mortgages. A lot of younger people are carrying $750,000 to $1 million mortgages, which is just absolutely untenable. And of course, as it turns out, that what's been happening is that a lot of these people have been getting HELOC loans, that's a home equity line of credit, and using the equity in their home to pay down the mortgage. So we have financial pressure on the one side, we have job loss pressure on the other side. In Ontario here, we're still shuddering from the loss of GM, General Motors, who will be shuttering their last plant in fall of this year. A town close to me, Peterborough, a town that has about 70 to 80,000 people living there, has just lost GE, General Electric. They're pulling out completely and leaving an empty plant and a lot of jobless people. So there's a lot of pressures on people coming from every direction. And then you add on to that the fact that somewhere between 75 and 95% of Canadians feel that their politicians don't really care about their plight. So you have a lack of faith in your leaders. They feel that they just don't understand and that they're really taking care of themselves rather than the welfare of the country. So when you have that combined lack of faith, pressure on jobs, loss of income and increase of expenditures, you have a situation that is ripe for rigorous protest. Anyway, let's take a quick look at some of these articles that I found, and then we'll come back and we'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. Okay, global news. Truck convoy leaves Alberta for Ottawa Thursday. This is about uniting Canada. A truck convoy left Red Deer, Alberta on Thursday morning for a 4-day trek to Ottawa to take a message to politicians on Parliament Hill. This is about uniting Canada with everybody that has an issue with the current government. You know, oil, gas, carbon tax, Bill C-48, C-69, whatever the issue is, organiser Glenn Carrick told Global News on Monday. This is the United We Roll official convoy for Canada, and this is the only convoy that's going all the way across the country. Every peaceful, respectful Canadian is welcome to join. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a yellow vest or blue coveralls or black hard hat, Carrick said. Whatever it is, we respect everybody's right to protest. Globe and Mail, pro-pipeline convoy overshadowed by link to yellow vest. Jason LeBlanc will hop into one of his farm semi-trailer cabs next week to join a convoy of trucks and big rigs heading to Ottawa that was originally conceived as a rallying call for Alberta's oil sector and Western frustrations with the federal government. But some of those rallies and the cross-country convoy that sets off on Thursday from Red Deer, Alberta, have become overshadowed by the presence of self-described yellow vest protesters. They've adopted the uniform from the movement in France and introduced a long list of grievances, from the carbon tax and the environmental legislation to anti-immigration messages and at times violent rhetoric that have prompted condemnations from politicians and a split among convoy organisers. Mr. LeBlanc doesn't identify as a yellow vest protester himself, but he has no problems riding alongside them to Ottawa and joining them at a planned rally on February the 19th on Parliament Hill. And that's tomorrow. And here we go, Canadians see politicians as out of touch, remote, poll with video. And this is from the Ottawa Citizen. An overwhelming majority of Canadians feel politicians in Ottawa have little or nothing in common with them and don't believe the political elite in the nation's capital understand the values and aspirations of average people. A new poll conducted for Postmedia News reveals. A survey also found Canadians generally don't trust politicians, especially at the federal and provincial levels, and believe there's too much government interference in their lives. Furthermore, people across the country believe we pay too much in taxes and don't get good value for the services delivered in return. A whopping 95% of Canadians feel politicians in Ottawa have nothing in common, 44%, or only a little in common, 51%, with average Canadians, while only 5% believe members of Parliament and senators have a lot in common with them. There you go. There's your 1% right there. In the same vein, 84% of those polled either strongly agree, 38%, or somewhat agree, 46%, the political elite in Ottawa isn't tuned in to what's really important to average Canadians. Aga Khan Island that hosted Trudeau, owned by company with offshore ties, record shows. Fancy that. Bahamas hideaway linked to a web of companies in countries that impose strict financial secrecy. Now, this was an all-expense paid-for trip for Justin Trudeau around Christmas to go visit the Aga Khan down in Bermuda. And here we are, the house on Belle Isle, Bahamas. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's visit to the island in December at the invitation of the Aga Khan and Trudeau's helicopter ride to the island are under review by the federal ethics officer. Okay, that somehow managed to cost the Canadian government $236,000. CBC, Trouble in Paradise, Justin Trudeau's rich friend keep making things awkward. The Prime Minister's proximity to wealth is once again an issue. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, right, came under fire during question period Monday for revelations about Chief Liberal fundraiser Stephen Bronfman left and other details that came out of the Paradise Papers leak of offshore tax haven records. And this is why we have the actual perception of politicians leading a gilded life. Trudeau defends fundraiser with Chinese businessman who later donated $200,000 to Father's Foundation. Trudeau insists that he and his ministers are following fundraising rules to the letter. So as you can see, the arrogance of our leaders is pretty plain to see, that they really do not care about the plight of the small person, the small business, the medium-sized business, or the middle class. Now, one of the things that I found about living in Canada, and anyone who's visited here will say exactly the same thing, the people here are extremely friendly and easy to get along with. In fact, there was a joke recently in a magazine, and it was down in Florida, and the question was, how do you get 200 Canadians out of a swimming pool? And the answer was, well, you just ask them. So they are very polite, they are very difficult to anger, and so in many ways Canadians tend to suffer in silence. But I would hate to see the ire of Canadians when they finally reach their breaking point, and I think we are awfully close to that. As I say, I run a very small business, I live very close to the ground, I have a modest income, and I live in a modest home where I grow most of my own vegetables, that kind of stuff, and you know, I am living very, very simply, and so I understand the cost of living and what other people are experiencing, and we're now seeing more and more seniors in this area who are actually accessing food banks. These older Canadians who have pensions that were never really designed to keep up with inflation haven't kept up with inflation, and they have struggled and cut corners, and now they're at the point where they're actually having to access outside help to make ends meet. So basically you are hitting every sector in the country. Young Canadians, working Canadians, middle-class Canadians, Canadian small business owners, medium-sized factory owners, everybody is feeling the pinch. So yes, I think we could most definitely get Yellow Vest protests in Canada, and I think they could be coming this year, and if not this year, very soon into the new year, based on the cost of heating our homes. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. We'd love to hear your comments. Anyway, in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off. Please, you have yourself a great week coming up, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Take care now. See ya. Bye now.